Hi, everyone. Today, we have a guest here on the podcast. Teresa, please introduce her.
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you, Fortunatus Games. So, yes, I'd like to introduce Claudia C. She is an immigrant, and she has immigrated to the United States in 1991, and she feels that she can relate to a lot of Sam's family's experiences, most notably the immigration experience that Lev and Riza had experienced when arriving in America. And she's also been following Sam's story all these years, and she's quite enjoyed Sam's character growth and development. And she feels that many of his assimilation experiences, or rather the resistance and struggle thereof and within, she feels that many of the themes, many of the experiences she can relate to, and many other immigrants can, despite the time gap, despite like it being, 19, early of 20th century, that there are many themes and problems that still persist with the immigrant experience in coming to North America. And so this is Claudia C, and she's a very remarkable woman, and she has a very remarkable experiences to share that relate to Sam's experience.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for coming here today, Claudia.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. Um, uh, I'd like to have my how can I say to tell my experience when I came to this country in 1991.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, First of all, it was a big shock into the language. It was one of the biggest barriers there. The language, because I couldn't speak enough English, and and it took me a long time to learn English, and I'm still learning English. And uh, and it was everything was completely different. It's everything new. You are unfamiliar with everything, and you have to learn everything like you are starting from kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is very scary, isn't it? Everything's
Yeah.
so different. And sometimes you feel like you're not learning fast enough to keep track of everything, because not only do you have to learn the language, you have to learn how society functions, you have to learn how to talk to people, because the manners may be different, right? Or how people
Oh,
communicate might be very different. So, interpersonal communication is very different after immigration. And maybe even like your expectations, did you think that your expectations became very different after you came to America versus what you thought America was back in Honduras?
yes. I have when I came here, I found out that everything was wrong. What the people talk about, come to America. I I thought that we have the opportunities and all those kind of dreams that every person had. And I found out that everything is different. uh, you have to start from the bottom, and you have to learn English. You have to adapt to the weather, adapt to the peoples, and everything. And it's been a quiet, like a school for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
What was the hardest part about adjusting to America?
I would say the language, number one, and number two, to understand the mentality of the people, because they react, they have different reactions to when you ask a question or something. They think that you don't know anything, that you are, like ignorant, and that, you it's very hard to explain it, but that's how I felt then. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of negative assumptions about people in America. and sometimes they are kind of rude. You know, people in America and in other countries like to hide behind, you know, this wall of civility, and like they like to pretend they're very well educated and very, you know, nice to people, but in reality, the more you talk to them, the more their ignorance comes out sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I experienced that a lot.
Yes, there's many experiences that you could talk about when dealing with the how do I say, the antisocial tendencies.
Yeah.
Um, maybe you could sort of expand on how communities are different.
From Honduras?
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
comparison.
For example, we communicate a lot in the Latin world, you know, in my world. We are we help each other, you know, and you know your neighbor, you know, and you know their names, how many children that, you know, that person had, or anything, you know, what kind of job they had, or even at what time they come back from work and things like that, you know. And here, I don't even know who live next to me. You know, I see cars parked in the parking lot. I don't know who those cars belongs to, you know. And I say, but what kind of society is this that you don't know who is who?
Right.
You know,
And there's like more selfishness and
more
materialism.
selfishness, yes, and everything is about money. Yeah. And in Honduras, we don't. I remember we didn't have that, and you know, everything is about, you know, I can help you, you help me when I'm in troubles, and that's how I live all my life. And I came here, people don't even see it in your face when you know.
It's like they have no humanity.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people in America might be more protective of themselves also. They're more paranoid about other people. So this is why they don't open up. And this is why they're so closed, maybe, because they don't feel like there's any need to open up. You know, people in America may be socialized to believe that they're okay with just their family and like the friends they know. They don't need to expand beyond anyone else, and they just go home after work. I think this is really pandemic, especially to North America, because I can also make a point of comparison. I would say that North America really encourages this kind of isolation because of how spread out everything is. You know, in a place where everything's closer together and you don't have to drive an hour to buy groceries or something like that, people will probably talk more. But in America, Canada, and parts of Australia where you have to drive really long distances just to do something basic, sometimes you just waste all your time basically in the car. So this makes people very tired when they go home after work and they don't have time to socialize with anyone except for play video games and Netflix, which basically leads to a cycle of being isolated and just not getting to know any new people. I think that's what a lot of people in America and a lot of other countries that are really spread out, you know, even Australia and New Zealand have this issue where people just aren't talking to anyone because everything's so spread out. And it takes time and money and energy to get out of the house just to do something really simple.
Really simple, yeah. I agree with Imelda, yeah. Because just when I was a teenager, I remember just to go to the market. It wasn't a big deal. You just go and get your vegetables, and it took 20 minutes and go back home, and that was it. And we went to the market almost every day. And here, go to a market or supermarket, oh my God, you gotta take 2 or 3 hours to get there.
Yeah. And I would say that in America, I'm not going to overgeneralize. It really depends on where you live. 90% of America is suburban or rural, so you're going to get that. But for people living in New York City, it might be different, you know, because people in New York City often don't have to drive cars. A lot of them just take the taxi or they walk or they take the subway. So I think maybe they have a different experience, right? So we can't say all of America, it's just most of America.
Most of America, yeah, I agree with you. And it's a very complex you know, situation, you know, where you want to have some kind of communication with people, but they don't let you do it. You know, because it seems like they are afraid to say hi or good morning or anything like that. You know, and you feel like very isolated. You know, you are learning to do the same thing too.
And I think it also changes one's personality, because the longer you're in a situation like this, it becomes normal. So you start thinking that this is normal, and then you don't behave the way you used to do anymore. So you become more quiet and more isolated over time.
Yeah.
I also think that a lot of immigrants in general feel very isolated because, you know, especially they don't really have anything except for their immigrant community, right? Fortunately, in Salmon, New York, there's a huge Eastern European Jewish community that speaks Yiddish there, and they have a Yiddish theater, so they don't have that much of a problem. But for people who are from a really smaller ethnic group that doesn't have this community, it can be very isolating. They don't fit in anywhere, not with the quote unquote white mainstream or with other ethnic communities. So they don't really know what to do, and they kind of feel lost and isolated. Because I think I noticed that in a lot of countries like America, Canada, Australia, the pattern of immigration is so that every type of immigrant is with another type of immigrant. So basically, it's like really like an enclave. Like there's a billion ethnic enclaves, and if you don't fit into any of them, how are you going to socialize? Because you don't fit in the white mainstream or with any of the established immigrant communities. For example, if you're from like Moldavia and everyone around you is Indian or Chinese or like, you know, from Latin America, you're not going to fit in as a Moldavian.
Yeah. Yeah, because I wouldn't, in my situation, you know, I wouldn't go for that, you know, because I'm Hispanic. So you're right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think immigration is something that, you know, creates a lot of challenges, not only in terms of language and like, you know, getting used to how people communicate in the other country, but also, you know, expectations change. For example, most immigrants don't expect that going to another country will change how they socialize with people and how many friends they have. But some people who used to be very sociable in one country, after they move to another, basically become very isolated, and they don't really talk to anyone outside of their kids or, you know, their spouse and like maybe 2 or 3 friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how would you agree with that? And I mean, what would you add to your experience? Like, what would you input of your experience?
Well, I would say that uh, I feel the same way. You know, I feel isolated, and you know, I don't find people they speak my own language, or even what you know the Spanish people eat, you know, the foods and all that. I don't find it here, you know. So I feel isolated, you know, somehow. You know?
Yeah.
How do you find, you know, for example, Hispanic culture in the US differs from, you know, culture in Honduras? Do you feel that Hispanic culture in the US is authentic, or do you think it's a little bit sensationalized and stereotyped by the media?
I believe the media trying to tell us that you gotta speak English, I know Spanish, and that you gotta be a you know you gotta be a part of their American culture, and not to forget about who you are. Your identity is practically they want to erase it. You know, they don't want to. They don't want to hear about you, who you are. Yeah, and
what about the stereotypes?
Oh yes, that the thing about the, you know, this, you know, for example, they say let's celebrate
Dia de los Muertos.
Dia de las Muertes, you know, or Cinco de Mayo. Yes, we do have that. It's part of the Latin culture, but it's just for some people.
For example, Cinco de Mayo is for people in Mexico.
In Mexico.
But Honduras has its own Independence Day, which is, you can explain it.
Yeah, we don't celebrate Cinco de Mayo. And or Dia de las Muertes. Dia de las Muertes is a completely different way to do it down there in Central America.
And like in Honduras, you have your own tradition, so it's
Yeah.
not like cocoa, which
No,
I know that
that's not true. I never saw that in my country.
no.
No.
And also you have
No.
different things, like you don't have ofrendas. You don't.
No.
It's a very different thing. Like I think you explained it.
Yeah.
Would you like to share about a tradition your grandmother had for November 1st?
For November 1st, I remember my grandmother used to go to the cemetery and decorate all her, their relatives, uh, uh, tombstones,
Mhm.
with the flowers, and she even brought a picnic, and cause we were little, and that was the tradition for November 1st.
Mhm.
But in Mexico, they do it in a different way.
Right, with all the lavish
Way and fireworks, and not that I'm criticizing, but I mean,
it's different. You can't generalize
you
it.
can't generalize, because we are every in other words, every country is different.
And food too. Like
And food.
I had explained to her that food, when people think of Latin food, they think of all the spicy stuff. But if you would like to give an input of Honduran food, how is Honduran food unique from like say comparison to Mexican food?
Yeah. For example, Mexico is based on hot spices.
Mm-hmm.
I never ate hot spices in my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
In Honduras, we don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is based more in sweetened things,
And
salty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they try to tell us that we gotta eat hot spices, that we all read hot peppers.
Like
I never ate one in my whole life.
Mm-mm.
So this is not true. Not all Hispanics, we are the same.
Right, right.
No.
And also things like approach to things, or stereotypes. Like not everyone is like Antonio Banderas flamenco bandido.
Yeah, they're all based in Spain, and that we dance the flamingo and the toros fights and all that, whatever you call that. But that's in Mexico and Spain.
And Honduras has its own traditions and its own music and dance and everything.
And they say, when they say the toreros and all that, and my granny used to tell us, that's a crime,
Yeah.
and I never saw a bullfight,
right?
Never in my whole life.
Yeah.
And they try to tell us that yes, we are like a cookie cutter, we
yes,
are
exactly.
cut in the same way, and that's where we are.
Right. I mean, I think you had an experience where a person had said about, why weren't you doing this, or why weren't you wearing this?
Oh yeah, when was that?
I believe it. No, I believe that was when I was very young, and we were attending certain social events.
Oh yeah, I remember that. She asked me. She came over. I was sitting there on the table with another children, and you remember. Mm-hmm. And she said to me, "Oh, are you, his wife, my husband? He gave my name." And she said, "Oh, but don't you eat tortillas in your house? Don't you eat beans?" And I just turned around, and I said, and she said, "But I thought don't you wear red and green colors?" And I felt offended, because,
Do you remember what she said about the going to the store, that one store?
Yeah, and he said, well, you know what? She said, we have a store, and it is especially just for people like you.
There's a Mexican store that sold that Goya stuff, which I know you hate Goya so much.
And I hate Goya, because I don't need that stuff. And she said, but you will be welcome, and there is a van who take you over there in case you don't know where it is. And I just look at her, I just want to tell her to back off, And I don't think she realized that she offended me.
I suppose she had good intentions. But thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen. And, I felt so weird at that moment that I didn't know what to say to her.
I do remember, I think I was 10 at the time. I remember you were how do I say, it was very awkward from that moment, especially since that was the woman I was playing with her kid, and we had to do like this activity together.
Yeah, I know.
It was kind of painful.
I remember. And then she said to me, oh, you have a black hair, but don't you wear those braids? And I say, no, I don't wear braids. Oh, she said, but it's like she knew what she was asking me, but at the same time, she was pretending I don't know, she didn't want to hurt me or something.
Mm-hmm.
But very,
condescending.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go back there again.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree. I mean, in America and I think especially American media, right? It seems like a lot of cultures are definitely overgeneralized. I mean, yes, especially non-white cultures, but I would say even white culture in America is generalized, right? And it's not like not all white people are like that, but in America, they're like, you're white, you're black, you're Hispanic, etc., right? They make these huge generalizations based on someone and what they look like, but there's so much variation within each group. And I would say that each of these groups are actually kind of artificial because, Black, yes, most people in America who are Black are descended from, the slaves who were brought to America by force. But then there's also, the Black American community that's descended from, for example, Nigerian immigrants, right? So that's also a little bit of a different experience. And, for example, in the Hispanic community, like we said, we have, people like you, Honduran, and then we have Mexican American, we have, Chicano, who are like, the Texan Mexicans who have been there for like 5 generations, and they're very Americanized. And they're also considered Hispanic, I believe, in America, despite being in America for so long, right?
Yes, they are considered Hispanic, yeah.
So how would you compare like the Texicano experience to, like, say, Mexican or Honduran, you know what I mean, or just Latin America in general?
I would say that people they live in Texas, they are born in Texas, but their parents came from Mexico.
Well, they might have lived there for generations.
I think they don't speak Spanish anymore.
No, many of them have very limited.
Some of them they don't wanna speak Spanish, or they wanna learn the American ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to the point that they don't even know who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where, we get that confusion,
Right.
Yeah,
right.
that, people don't know who really are.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, because we try to pretend that.
So it's a cultural loss.
Cultural loss, yeah.
And do you feel like people are compelled to let go of their cultures because there's no community to sustain it?
Yeah, I believe that's what it is. There is no support there, to go to somewhere where you can, have friends that they speak the same language, or, spend time with, with the same children, they speak in the same language,
Right.
or anything,
Yeah.
And that's what it's disappearing, it's like it's fading away.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, would you say that this is a very negative experience?
Yeah, I would say it is.
Yeah. And so you recently have been on a journey of reclaiming, your identity, so to speak. What are some of the things that you've been doing to do it? Like in the past year or so, like to sort of revitalize that identity.
I've been doing, for example, for almost, I would say 30 years, I forgot how Honduras look like. I mean, the geography,
Right.
that, and I got my books out, remember?
Yes, I remember that.
And I started to read, and I thought, oh my gosh, yes, I remember this place when I went that, when I was a kid.
Right.
And I remember the gold mines and all that. And you forgot all that because,
you lose touch with
You lost touch with everything. And I've been doing that, and we are speaking more Spanish, right?
Yes,
Me,
yes,
you know?
yes,
Yeah,
we are
we're
absolutely
speaking a lot of Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And the other day, I don't know why, but I asked you if I can get
Telenovelas.
those telenovelas.
And we are going to find them
Yeah.
more on Amazon Prime because YouTube is being very terrible about it.
Yeah.
You know, darn Telemundo.
They are not my, you know,
because we were getting into other TV serials.
Oh, it's so lovely, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
What, the Russian ones?
Oh, I love it.
Because well, we got into it for a very shallow reason, but now we like it for deeper reasons.
For deeper reasons. Yeah,
because we both have a crush on that one guy.
Yeah, not only the crush, but the way they
tell the
stories, and they're more real.
Yes,
you know, they
even telenovelas are real, even though they are exaggerated a little bit in the old Spanish tradition.
Yeah,
but yeah, foreign serials, please watch them, people.
Yeah.
But yes, and I think you've also been revisiting literature. You've been reading Neruda, you know, Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Oh yes, I love his books.
Yes, big Marquez fan.
I used to have his collection.
Right, and we're and you've begun reading it again.
Oh yes,
you know. Yeah.
We have a wonderful
poetry
too,
like, you know, for example, Neruda, and I think that's why you were liking Mayakovsky, because Neruda reminded you of Mayakovsky.
Oh yes,
but Neruda's more gentle than Mayakovsky. You know, Mayakovsky's like, oh
yeah,
you know.
But I really like that, you know.
Yeah. And I think we were also discussing too how some of, like, you were also doing criticism of certain poetry, like how difficult Marty's poetry.
It's completely different.
It is. He is a poet, Marty. I forget his full name. What was his
name?
Jose Marty, and very difficult poet. Some people go gaga over him, but Mom thinks he's too pretentious.
He's too pretentious, and I don't like that.
Yeah, it's definitely a cultural loss, as you know, as we were talking about, you know, the Mexicans in Texas who have been there for like 5 generations, right? And like we said, you know, my series also tackles a little bit about identity and the loss of identity over generations in a similar vein to that. Because I was reading some things on the internet about why some of these people who have been in America for many generations, they never learned Spanish because they were pressured to assimilate, especially like, you know, 100 years ago, kind of similar to Sam's family. You know, people were saying, if you don't speak English at home, your kids are not going to be able to succeed at school. You know, if you become too Mexican, or like you celebrate too many holidays that aren't, quote, American, your kids are going to get bullied, and they're not going to have friends, right? So then some of them changed their last names. They just became as Americanized, or we should say WASP, as possible, and basically just watered down their own roots. And as we talked about yesterday with Andre, you know, Teresa's character, he had to do that, but it was for a different reason. It was for a much more political and physically dangerous reason, because he wanted to protect his kids, and he was a Cossack, and in the Soviet Union, being a Cossack was a very dangerous thing, especially since, you know, they were deemed to be anti-revolutionary. So that's a little bit different and much more dangerous than the more subtle kind of assimilation that we see here in the US, especially, well, not here in the US, but like you guys in the US. Basically, you know, this idea that it's not pushed right at you. No, there's no gun pointed at your head like, you know, Andre had a gun pointed to his head, unfortunately. But it's there, it's in the media, people are always seeing it around you. The media is definitely a large factor, I would say. You know, people are always, you know, in the media, you always get the feeling that, you know, if you speak English, you're kind of superior, and you have to speak like quote unquote accentless English and just sound like white when you're on the phone. Because if you don't sound white on the phone and you sound too quote ethnic, then people think, oh, you're not American. You know, why should we hire you? You know, we should hire an American, because they have this idea in their head of what an American looks and sounds like, which is very unfortunate, because America was originally very diverse and multicultural, but because of these ideas of Anglo-Saxon superiority and English being the superior language, that really forces people to let go of their heritage because of how the media just portrays cultures that are not English speaking as basically inferior. And this is something that Sam and his family has to put up with. And well, Lev and Sam are pretty much firebrands. They really don't like this idea. So basically, they're just like sticking up a middle finger and saying, you know, America, we're not going to put up with this. I don't have a problem living in America, you know? I think America has a lot of good things to offer. But at the same time, we are not okay with this idea that speaking Yiddish is a bad thing and we need to become fake WASPs, right? This is something that we can't stand for, and we think it's against our ethical standards. Because as we will learn, Lev is someone who cares a lot about ethical standards and morals, and he thinks this kind of coercion, even though they're not pointing a gun directly at him, is pretty damn bad.
And would you feel that you had the pressure to let go of your cultural things, for example, passing it down to me? That's why you were reluctant to pass these things down to me, like even speaking Spanish, like when I was around 4 or 5, you stopped doing it because of criticism from other people.
From other people. So I felt like you know, you will fit in the group of, you know,
and then people would voice, you know, their thing, like, you know, she uses too many Spanish words,
or, you know, and that's what I stopped speaking, you know, Spanish with you for a while.
For a very long time. It's only been recently revised in the past 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years, yeah. And I agree with Imelda, you know, that's how you feel, you know, like why should I give up my identity, you know, my culture, my language and everything. Yes, I want to learn English, but at the same time, I wanna keep that in me, you know.
Right,
you know?
right. And then of course, like there's always people who are subtly discriminatory against people who speak English with accents, as she had pointed out. And I think you have really dealt with that so much from people. They claim that they don't understand you, you know. If you want to like expand on that.
Yeah, for example, 2 or 3 years ago, you remember what happened?
Right. That person had called.
That person called, and I took the message, you know, and I said, you know, I told her what was going on, and she said, "Oh, I better call later because I don't understand your accent," and she hung up.
Oh my gosh!
I felt really, I feel like I was dumb and stupid, and you know.
Right.
It made you feel that way.
It does. You know, that sort of discriminatory thing against accents.
Yeah.
You know, particularly when making that kind of judgment on a person, that you know, intelligence is based on something so superficial as that.
Yeah.
When someone has, you know what I mean, just making those assumptions is it's a terrible thing to do.
Yeah.
It truly is.
And
because you don't know the depth of that person. You know, for example, you are very much a mathematical, mechanical prowess, you know.
Because I love math, you know that.
Of course you do. Of course, you know, and you know, things of that nature. And it's how do I say, it's. I think it just shows a lot of sad ignorance on people's part.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of problems with, you know, discrimination, and there's so many angles to see it.
Right, exactly.
We'll never stop unpacking it. There's so many layers to it.
Yes, there is. Yeah. So would you like to expand on how you feel about Sam's work, Sam's story? Like, do you feel like you can relate a lot to
Imelda, I've been reading just a few pages of it, and I feel so related to him and his parents, you know, because I wish I could do what
Sam's
daddy did.
Yeah.
You know, not to change your name and everything, you know, but you know, his mom has to do it, you know.
No, his mom didn't.
She didn't. Yeah. Oh, that's right. She didn't do it.
Right.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that I feel related to it because, you know, That's how it is when you come to America. You know, you don't know what to do. You know, you just
It's sort of as the old saying says, water cuts stone, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, what I aim to do with Sam in New York is basically create a counter narrative to what we usually see in the media, especially, you know, I am not from America. I've never lived in America, but unfortunately, I did do the AP exams and it's based on American curriculum. So I had to read a story called The Joy Luck Club, which I've talked to Teresa about a number of times. And I think it basically, to me at least, it summarizes a lot of things that I don't like to see in these kind of narratives about quote unquote diversity, because it's not diverse, because all of them are the same. So basically it's about an immigrant family, and the immigrant mothers and the daughters don't get along because the daughters are all really Americanized, while the mothers are quote unquote regressive. They have regressive values because they're from another country. And, you know, they don't speak good English. They have broken English, while the daughters, you know, they only know English very well. Like they have broken, like they can't really speak to their mothers properly because of the language barrier between the two. And basically all four of the daughters, I think, or most of them, choose to marry white, rich American guys, right? So it's basically this idea of like second generation just becomes totally against what the first generation stands for, like culturally, linguistically, and even in choosing to get married to like the whitest, they were all blonde, by the way, I think. Blonde, rich, white Republican guys. Like, I'm just like, okay, that's kind of weird. I mean, there's no diversity. Like, why can't they marry like a black guy or anyone else? I mean, America is full of diversity. Why does it only have to be that specific demographic? So there's a lot of books out there like this. I mean, I don't really remember all the details of Joy Luck Club, so I might have gotten it wrong. But the general idea is that, you know, it's always assumed that the immigrant kids will have to become really Americanized. And there isn't a single kid, because there's four of them, who wants to stand against it. So I wanted to present a character in the character of Sam who stands against it. You know, he is second generation. He was born in the US, but unlike these characters that I keep on seeing, he doesn't want to be 100% white American, Republican, whatever, right? Like he wants to be himself, and that happens to not be like that. He wants to speak Yiddish. He wants to be part of Yiddish theater. He doesn't want to become, quote unquote, just a typical white American. Because what happened in the early 20th century with a lot of, quote, white immigrants from Eastern Europe and Southern Europe was that after they lost their language, they still had their ethnic last name. Like, you know, you get these people with Polish last names that are unpronounceable, but they can't even pronounce it themselves because they lost the language, right? And I think it's really sad. Yeah. And I read this thing where there was one person who was Russian descent in America, but you know how like she's a woman, but like in Russian, and your last name depends on your gender, right? Because if you're a woman, it'll be like Lestenkova, for example, or like if you're male, you're Lestenkov. But she didn't know that, so like she's called like Anna Lestenkov or something. And a lot of Russians were confused when they saw her on television. They're like, if you're a woman, why would you be called Lestenkov? But the point was that she's American and she's, you know, she has the ethnic last name, but she just lost the culture associated with it. And what happened to a lot of ethnic whites in America, and ethnic whites is the name that they gave these immigrants from Eastern Europe and Southern Europe, because they weren't WASP, they weren't, you know, Western European, so they were considered ethnic. So these people just basically lost all of their culture because, you know, there were these stereotypes against Slavic people. There were these stereotypes against people from Southern Europe. You know, they're all peasants. They don't know how to read properly. They're like hotheads. You know, they're involved in crime. So with all these negative stereotypes in the media, of course, people will get pushed to just become generic white bread Americans. And it's sad because, you know, a lot of people just end up kind of hating a part of themselves, and that's the pain of it. And I think it's really bad, especially for the older generations, to see their kids doing this, because, you know, a lot of these older people tried to get these people interested in their own culture, but they're like, oh, I can't, because, you know, the media and all of these horrible influences that make people just kind of break down between the generations.
That's very true. You sort of feel that, like, I remember you were telling me about how you feel that way, that you sort of feel pressure to almost hate what you are, a part of what you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you almost feel like you have to lie, like,
Yeah.
you know, would you like to relate on that?
You almost, that was, you almost, hate the way you look.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just want, oh, well, what, I don't have a white skin or
Mm-hmm.
the blonde hair,
And then also too, like, you're almost ashamed to tell where you're from.
Yeah.
I remember you were telling me to tell people that you were from Argentina.
Yeah, somewhere, because if I say Honduras, they're gonna think that,
Yeah.
I am illegal or something,
It's
it is very hard,
It is.
Mm.
It is. It is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. We learned so much about your experiences, Claudia. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for supporting my work. And Teresa, thank you for asking these amazing questions.
Oh, you're very welcome. I was very honored to have her on here. I'm very honored that you asked her to be on here. And we were both very honored to, share these experiences and how they relate to Sam, and that it's pretty much a timeless struggle. I mean, I think even, who knows, maybe even 100 years into the future, we may still be contending with these issues. Who knows,
That's terrible. I really hope it changes soon. I hope it doesn't last for another 100 years.
Oh, I certainly hope not either. Hopefully we will evolve. Humanity must evolve. So, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Imelda.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Claudia.
Thank you.
All right. See you.
See you. Bye.
Bye.